well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Welcome to another edition of Bearing Arms, Cam and Company. My name is Cam Edwards. It is good to have you on the program today. We got a busy one for you. Joining me in just a matter of moments, we're going to talk with Jon Stokes, editor at The Prepared, talking about what you need to do to be prepared in case the violence and the rioting and the looting comes to your neighborhood. Also, Rob O'Donnell, former New York police officer, with Brothers Before Others, joining us here in just a little bit as well, talking about specifically what we saw in New York City on Tuesday night. Of course, that scene repeated in cities across the country as the looting, as the rioting continues. And as I said at Bearing Arms earlier today, these riots are not just coming with a loss of property and a loss of stuff. It is coming with a loss of life as well. We had 4 officers shot in St. Louis on Monday night. We had a federal marshal who was shot and killed in Las Vegas. Homicides are soaring in cities like Chicago, Philadelphia, Memphis. Not all of these are riot-related homicides, but as the police are diverted to deal with these riots and to deal with the looting, then the street criminals are running free. And they are acting with impunity on city streets around the country. And again, there is a human cost to all of this. And so I hope and pray that we can get back to some semblance of peace here before long. But that, according to my first guest, might not happen for quite some time. Jon Stokes, again, the editor of The Prepared, sat down with me for a lengthy conversation about what you need right now in your home in order to be prepared, not only in terms of a firearm, but some of the other stuff you might need, as well as how long Jon thinks the unrest might last and how much worse things might get. Take a look and listen. Jon, thanks so much, sir, for coming on the program. It's good talking with you again.
Always a pleasure.
The last time that we had you on, it was probably about a week, maybe a week and a half before the national emergency was declared. States started going on lockdown. And it's interesting, I got a lot of response the last time we had you on, and most of it was very positive. There were a couple of people who said, this is crazy. It's not going to be that bad. Well, it's worse now. And, here we are at the beginning of June. Not only are we still dealing with the effects of the coronavirus, but now we've got riots taking place in cities across the country. As the editor at The Prepared, I mean, you have been sort of in this, prepper world and the prepper mindset for a while. And I'm sure people have said, this is ridiculous. Why do you need all this stuff? Come on, nothing's ever going to happen. First of all, what have you felt a little, like told you so? Have you had those moments over the past week or so?
Yeah, I have. It's a lot less awesome than you think of a feeling.
Right.
I had just published a piece last week. There was all this optimism around the reopening. Everybody was feeling sassy. And the piece was basically hope for the best, prepare for the worst. And so I went through and I just said, look, whatever it is you've been dealing with, as far as the challenges of this, whether it's weird food shortages, shortages of supplies and things that you need, your security situation, whatever it is, imagine that gets way worse. That's what you prep for. So I started encouraging people, the reopening, the optimism, all the stores coming back online, use that stuff use this moment and this surge of optimism as basically, I'm going to go out, I'm going to get my ducks in a row for what happens when it gets worse. So now, just, a week later after that's gone out, things are materially worse in a lot of places. And it's not just because of the pandemic. Obviously, as you said, there's the security situation in these urban areas has deteriorated. And as a site, we have a lot of urban readers, a lot of city readers. So this impacts them directly.
Yeah, well, absolutely. That's the thing. Honestly, I live in a rural area. We have not had any rioting. We've not had any looting. Life has gone on pretty much as normal. And I feel very blessed and lucky that that's the case. But, And it's easy. Well, I won't say it's easy. It's easier to sort of have that prepper mindset and live that prepper lifestyle. If you've got, space for a garden, you can, raise your own livestock. You can do those things. But if you're sitting in a 1-bedroom apartment somewhere in a neighborhood that's now on lockdown and your grocery store has been burned to the ground and your pharmacy's been looted, what do you do? I mean, what is your advice to those folks who are living in that situation right now at this moment?
So I'm glad you asked. We could, it might be fun for you to have her on. We have an editor, Kelsey, who is new to preparedness, and we hired her just in March. And she's a really talented writer and editor, and she's very smart. And she's not a prepper, but I snatched her up. She was doing really good work, and I was like, "Look, man, this person's good." So we brought her on board, and she was interested in prepping. She's open to it. Not somebody that thought she was going to be a prepper. She lives in Minneapolis in the 5th precinct, where the post office has been burned, all this other stuff. So she's right there. The video that's going around the web of the National Guard marching through and then firing the paint canisters in the door, that's like 2 or 3 blocks from her house. So,
oh, wow.
So she is in the thick of it and has been. She had just been doing some basic prepper 101 stuff with us. She did a couple of calls with the site founder, John Ramey. And he's asking her, "Look, do you have a storage of water?" And she's like, "Well, I have some LaCroix." So this is sort of the kind of level that she was at with preparedness. And she's telling us she just wrote an article about what she wishes that she had done. And so this is her current state as of yesterday. And I'm kind of speaking for her based on this article. Again, I wish, she can certainly talk for herself, but, so this is like summary of her article. She's telling us in the chat, she's like, "Look, the city has told me to put together a go bag. The city has said, get medications that are essential, get food, get water." She's like, "The first problem is that the grocery stores are either looted or boarded up. They're all closed." She said, "The second problem is the pharmacies. You can't get medication. The pharmacies are all looted or boarded up. So there's no medication. There's no running out to get anything right now." She said, "I wish that I had all that stuff in my apartment." She said, "I wish that I had a gas mask." We have gotten, a lot of her friends have been tear gassed and stuff like this. She's like, "I wish I had a gas mask." She said, "I wish that I had, a multi-tool." She's like, "I wish that I had a serious first aid kit, like with a trauma kit, chest wound, wound irrigation, or chest seal, wound irrigation, the whole bit." Why? Because even though she's some number of blocks from a hospital, there are no first responders active right now. And she can't if something bad happens, she can't just call an ambulance or get to a hospital. The streets are closed down. She's like, "If I had a go bag, even if I had put together a go bag as the city is asking, I can't go anywhere. First off, 90% of my friends don't have cars. Second off, all of the exits out of the city are closed. And so we can't just leave the city and go to the burbs and buy groceries. That's like not even an option right now." So this is a person, lives in Minneapolis, very safe area, very nice area. All of a sudden she wakes up, her post office is burned. There's no essential services. She's in a complete SHTF situation, just like suddenly, and in the middle of a major American Midwestern city. No first responders, no essential services, no food, no water. She can't necessarily go outside and walk her dog to let the dog go potty because there's a curfew. And if the officers tell you to get back in the house, as we saw in the video, you kind of got to get back in the house. We looked into the legality of that. We do not have a Minnesota lawyer connection, or if we do, we haven't reached out to them. But, I had a lawyer look at this, and he wouldn't give like an official opinion. But he was like, "Look, we've looked at the Minnesota statute. You got to stay in your house, even if it's on your own property and you're just kind of in your own yard. They tell you to go back inside. You got to go back in and shelter in place." So they've got weird stuff going on. People have found in her neighborhood bottles of gasoline stashed in the bushes. this is a real thing. This is not an urban legend. Like, and in the city, there's a city announcement about it saying, look, people are finding bricks, bottles of gasoline, this kind of stuff stashed. Actually, I don't know if it's bricks, but projectile stuff like this. Dangerous things stashed in the bushes. I'm assuming, for further shenanigans. And so her and her neighbors went out like looking for this stuff, trying to find these things and neutralize these threats. And they're like, look, we don't even know if we're like good to do that right now. So there's a lot of this kind of stuff going on. And the thing I want to make clear from this is that she admits, she's like, I asked her, I said, if 2 weeks ago, if Kelsey from right now could go back and write a list of the stuff you just told me you want, a serious IFAC, again, visual first aid kit, with all the fixings, a gas mask, food, water. If she had taken that list and put it on your door with a note, you could time travel back, leave it on your door with a note, you would laugh. You would think this was insane. You would feel completely nuts buying a gas mask 2 weeks ago, buying a first aid kit. You would feel crazy. Now you need it. And I have this, a lot of us at Preppers have had this experience with this pandemic. I bought in December a bunch of N95s. Why did I buy them? Because they're on our list of things you should have, and I didn't have them. I had some old ones in my truck, like in the toolboxes of my truck. I had some, if I'm sanding or whatever.
Right.
I didn't have like a real good set. So I went on Amazon and I got these things. And when they showed up at my house, I snuck them up to my office because I didn't want my wife to see that I had bought all these like gas mask looking things and asked me if I had lost my mind,
Right.
And I remember bringing those things up and unboxing them and thinking, yeah, I probably just wasted a bunch of money here because this is a weird prep and it's so random. And, what is this even going to do for me? If we have a chemical attack, like I don't have a gas mask, It was a good prep. It was on the list. I bought it because it was on the list, and lo and behold, there it is. So, there's a lot of stuff on these lists that we talk to a lot of experts at theprepared.com, a lot of survival people, not just instructors, but austere medicine people, all first responders, and we put together these lists, and a lot of thought goes in them. They're not fantasy lists. They're lists based on people that have been in NGOs in Africa, doing work in the field in third world countries. And we put these together and, you get them. And unfortunately, people are having occasion to use that stuff right here in our cities. And if you are somebody who is in an urban area, who is in a city who has not been hit by this yet, congratulations, go get the stuff. Load up the list, get yourself some food, get yourself some water, get yourself a serious first aid kit, be able to irrigate a wound. And patch it up. I mean, this stuff isn't hard. You can learn a lot of this stuff from YouTube, honestly, to enough degree that you can get it done in a pinch if you can't get to a hospital. Get yourself some dressing to be able to pack a wound. All that stuff, get all that stuff that seems crazy. If it doesn't feel crazy when you're doing it, you're too late,
Right.
It should feel, by the time it's obvious that you need this stuff, you may either not be able to access it at all, or there's a run on it, anything like that. It's like a pulse oximeter, man. I bought a pulse oximeter at a time when that was a dumb thing for me to buy. And like now you can barely find them on Amazon because everybody wants pulse ox.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, listen, pulse ox, as you say, first aid kits. I imagine there's going to be a run on survival food, and there's certainly right now a run on firearms. I mean, we saw the NICS numbers for May released yesterday. National Shooting Sports Foundation says this was the highest May on record. Their adjusted NICS numbers about 1.5 million firearms sold, and I can only imagine that June is going to be up there as well. I mean, when you look around and you see some of the images of business owners protecting their shops. And we've seen this, all around the country from California to New York. You've got people who are out there protecting their homes, protecting their businesses, because as you say, the first responders can't respond. People are calling and saying, hey, listen, there's a fight in my front yard, or there are people that are, trying to come in, and they're literally being told, if they can get through to 911, they're literally being told, you're on your own. We don't know when we can get somebody out there.
Yeah. Yeah. I've been running around, topping off, my ammo supplies. I let my AR-15 ammo stash get kind of embarrassingly low. I shot all of not all of, but a lot of my green tip, last summer, just, I've got a range out back and I've got the good stuff left, but I don't have enough of that, that base of the bulk ammo. And I have been around looking for ammo, and I just bought actually 1,000 rounds. A local guy had it of M193. So that's good. But I've been out looking for ammo. My buddy, I have a friend that's locked down with me, and he's a new gun owner. He's my best friend growing up. He was best man at my wedding. He has not historically been like a gun person, and he's not opposed to it. He just, he inherited some guns from his dad. It's not his thing. He always said, look, if I'm ever in a situation of serious social unrest, then I'll buy a gun. Well, now he's like, okay, I guess my tripwire is tripped. So he went out and picked up a Ruger PC-9. I mean, I'm stacked with guns here. And so he's like, I'm interested in like an apartment gun that I can take back with me, because he lives in an apartment in Dallas.
Okay.
So he wanted something like more like apartment-y, kind of thing. So he picked up a little Ruger PC-9 on Friday, because I went by the gun store, my local gun store, and like, look, there's one on the wall. Go check it out. So he picked it up, and he was going back up to Dallas to do some stuff at his apartment. He stopped at all these places between here and Dallas, the Bellas, Bass Pro, Academy, all like places big and small, looking for 9mm. And he just wasn't able to score a lot of it. He's like, look, man, the 9mm is sold out. On Sunday, he came back and he was at some gun stores in the area. It's like, man, these places are packed. There's people in the gun store, and there's people that you don't expect to see. A lot of elderly folks are in the gun store, ton of minorities in the gun store here in Denton. Just like not your typical gun crowd, at least, per his internal stereotype. And looks like a lot of first time buyers. Just talking to he went out to GT Distributors here in Austin yesterday. And I don't know if you know those guys. They're a big online retailer. They have a showroom, mm-hmm. And they sell a lot to the police. And he's like, most of the crowd in there was cops, and they were dressed in, green and not in like the regular, blues and stuff like this. And they were all, making plans and talking about who's posted up where, and they were all, getting geared up. And the situation is just crazy. But yeah, I went back yesterday and to the gun store, and the wall had been cleaned out. The place was packed. My local little gun store, I managed to get some more ammo, but the guns are walking out the door like real fast.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's I mean, I'm sure you've seen it where you are, but here in Texas, man, people are tooling up, and they're not buying the exotic stuff. They're not buying the random, 6.5 Swede, whatever. I mean,
mm-hmm.
I have a 6.5 Creedmoor, from L&T. An AR and 6.5 Creed from L&T, and I can get the Gucci Hornady stuff all day long that I have food out of it. But the like meat and potatoes, kind of go to war stuff is like, you can't find it now.
Yeah. No, you're right. I mean, and it's, it's weird because in Virginia, we've had a lot of different runs. Like we had a run on firearms and ammunition right after the election last November, when Democrats took control of the state legislature and started, proclaiming they were going to ban guns and magazines. We had another run, and that lasted, I think, by the way, through the legislative session. We had another run when the coronavirus closures started hitting, because gun stores were never closed in the state of Virginia. So we had another big surge. And then things had just started to quiet down. I was talking to a friend who works at a local gun shop here, and he said, yeah, it's actually been, this was last week. He said, it's been kind of quiet past week and a half or so. He said, things are getting back to normal. Not anymore. No, I mean, again, this is, boom, and probably the biggest surge that they've seen just over the past 6 months, and they've seen a couple of different waves. So, you're right. I mean, I'd love to actually have you back on at some point and talk about, what you think this means in terms of the gun control debate going forward. There's been a lot of talk about the gun control movement is dead. I don't think Michael Bloomberg's ready to give it up, but certainly there are, many more Americans who are embracing, out of necessity, if nothing else, their right to keep and bear arms right now. Last question for you, John. And I'm not going to ask you to play Nostradamus here, but how bad do you think this is going to get, and how long do you think this might last?
So I've done a lot of sort of studying and watching of these kinds of breakdowns in Syria and Bosnia, and this is a pastime. A lot of preppers do this, So I'm not as well versed as many, but better than some. And one of the features that you'll see in these areas, like in Syria, man, you can go in one town and people are going to the beach and they're shopping at the mall, and in the town over, it's a war zone and the buildings are bombed out and whatever. We're getting a little tiny flavor of that here, where you can go out in one part of town and it's normality, and another part of town is a hot mess and it's lockdown and whatever. It's like, you go to Denton, Texas, and people are out at the Torchies and they're packed into the Torchies ordering tacos, and then you go down to Deep Ellum and it's a war zone. So that dynamic of crazy scenes on the nightly news, things like that, where you're in a pocket of it, or you're not in a pocket of it, or you don't know if it's going to move to your hood next.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to stretch out, I think, through the summer. And I say that because I don't know what the end game is. I see people, we've moved on. I don't think we've moved on from protest to riot, and from riot to something that's more like an insurrection in some areas, or an attempted one. And I say that advisedly. I'm not trying to stoke anything.
No, I get it. But you're right. I mean, this isn't just a riot for some people. I mean, and that's the thing, you have to look at you have to try to look anyway, I think, at individual motivations. There are some folks who are out there who are peacefully protesting. They want to see, the justice system reformed. Maybe they want to see an end to policing, although I can't imagine that idea is growing in popularity over the last week. Then you have those, opportunists who are, looking to take advantage of the chaos. But then you have those who really are committed to this, to this idea of burning everything down and rebuilding this perfect society on the ashes. Increasingly, I think it's become obvious that among that group, there are a lot of people who believe that this is their moment and they're not going to stop. They're not going to give up.
Yeah, that's what I think as well. I mean, I don't agree with some attempts I see out there to paint the protesters as a homogenous group. There's a lot of different characters out there, a lot of actors, a lot of interests, people that, and there's no list of demands yet. There's no formal, even Occupy eventually, as diffuse and crazy as it was, Occupy Wall Street, they eventually came up with some kind of list. There's no list here. It's not clear what is the end game, in any of this, other than, I don't know. I don't know. I don't want to speculate or put words in anybody's mouth. So for me, I am just planning on seeing that stuff continue to crop up and continue to worry about it. And it just, I double down on my meat and potatoes preps. Like, I'm buying ammo, I'm buying food, I'm putting solar in out here, I'm putting in a water tank, I'm getting some livestock. I'm on land where I can do that.
Mm-hmm.
And I haven't gone, I don't have the full doomer, loadout. I haven't had that. We're on well water, but if the power goes out, we don't have water because, the well pump doesn't work. So I'm addressing that stuff now and moving more towards the full doomer, kind of homestead thing, because it's too hard. It's too hard to predict what's next. I continue to hope that something will turn. I continue to hope that this coronavirus will just disappear the way people seem to think it has disappeared. That would be fantastic, man. I am a parent of 3 small kids who are ready to go back to school. They like their school. I am an investor. I am a business person. I'm ready for this to be done. So, or to move on to whatever the next freak show is, I don't know, but I'm over this one. But it's not over.
Yeah.
And it's too hard to get a sense for where things are going. But I am preparing for the worst and hoping for the best. But I don't have a sense of what's next other than you'll be most likely, things will be normal where you are up until the day that they're not. And then there'll be another place that it has been a complete mess that's tapering off and it's over there. Like that place is done, so maybe
Right.
in a night or two, Dallas is done and the Dallas people are worn out. They go home and they start to rebuild the downtown. And then it really gets bad in Houston or some smaller town like Beaumont or something,
Yeah.
So this thing is moving around. I mean, Fargo, North Dakota had, riots and stuff smashed out in Fargo, I mean,
I know.
So there's all kind of small places. It could come here. I'm right north of Austin in Georgetown. We could see some foolishness here in Georgetown.
Listen, when I drove into Farmville today, I'm looking, because there were rumors last night that there was going to be rioting and looting in Farmville, and it was a rumor. Nothing happened, but you're right. I don't think that you can just automatically assume, okay, well that's something that's happening in New York City, that's in LA, that's in Chicago, it's in these big cities. It's not going to happen where I am. Hey, John, listen, unfortunately, man, we are out of time, but I really do appreciate you coming on the program, talking with you. I could do this all day, as a matter of fact, but let's have you back at some point in the near future. Can we do that?
Yeah, sounds good, man. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, you bet. And theprepared.com is where you can find John's work and a lot of other great resources. Also, I want to plug Open Source Defense while you're on here as well, because that's another great resource for gun owners new and old. And John, until we talk again, be safe, man.
You too, man.
I also sat down and had the chance to speak with my friend Rob O'Donnell, former New York police officer, now with the organization Brothers Before Others, about the continued riots in New York City. Specifically, I want to talk with Rob about that since he knows the city so well, knows the department, and where we go. As there's just been this abdication of leadership on the part of Mayor Bill de Blasio, on the part of Governor Andrew Cuomo, what can be done to save the city?
There's self-reflection across the board that could be done here and needs to be done. We can't do that while we're burning, looting our stores and fighting each other in the streets. Now, where leadership comes in these riot situations is we realize this country was founded on peaceful protest. I applaud peaceful protest looking for change, even in this incident where it's against the police. That's how we get change in America. That's how we bring issues to light. But this is not what this is anymore. There may be a good majority of them that are looking for this peaceful protest, but then what's happening is you have these Antifa, radical, people who don't even live in these communities coming in with their supplies, their infrastructure, their funding, with their hammers, smashing windows, which then provides this crimes of opportunity for looting and such like that, which normally wouldn't take place in these communities. And we've seen the videos on the internet of these members of the black community challenging these white people, these kids, these Antifa types, dressed in their black with their masks, with their hammers, that don't live in the community, spray painting things, Black Lives Matter, smashing windows, that this isn't your community. We're going to get blamed for this, not you. And that's their goal. And where the black community needs to reflect just as much as the law enforcement community is, why is the black community that wants change and needs change in this country allowing these white Antifa type people to come into their community, hijack and manipulate their peaceful protest? They need to stop it from the ground up, just as law enforcement needs to set task forces to go into these crowds and strategically and surgically pick out these instigators, these radicals, and these people who are hijacking these peaceful protests.
I think it's a really good point. And again, it demonstrates to me, I think, again, this is not a simple thing here, right? And this is not just you can't just look at people who are out in the streets and say, oh, you know what, they're all out there rioting. A lot of them aren't. But you talk about those crimes of opportunity, the people who want to exploit this for their own agenda, which has nothing to do with justice for George Floyd. Frankly, I don't think it has anything to do with criminal justice reform or police reforms. I think there is a group of people who want to burn this country down, They believe that they can rebuild a better society on the ashes of what we have now. And you're right. They are exploiting this situation. They are furthering the flames here. And it has been, that's the thing. I mean, there are so many videos that you can watch that will just get your blood pressure boiling. But there are also, we are seeing these scenes where, as you say, legitimate protesters, peaceful protesters, are getting in the face of these Antifa members. You may have seen the video of the woman who walked up to the car and said, "Why are you giving a black man a brick? Why are you doing this? Why do you want to get him in trouble? Why do you want us to take the fall for what you're doing here?" If we do start seeing that reaction from within the protest, the legitimate protest movement, to expel these individuals, to understand that, listen, we're being painted with this negative brush. Maybe, again, if we, what you're actually talking about, I think, is society coming together saying, all right, we've got all kinds of problems, but here's one problem. The Antifa individuals, the people who are trying to burn it all down, who are just, nihilists, they've got no real agenda other than destruction. And then they'll figure out what happens next. If we can all come together and say, okay, well, that's one problem, then maybe we can stop the rioting, maybe we can stop the looting, maybe we can stop the burning, and then maybe we can sit down and start to have these conversations and these discussions and find resolution on some of these other issues where, I like to think that as Americans, we can actually, have maybe even an argument, but it doesn't lead to cities burning down over our disagreements. We can, have these debates, and we can sort of, hopefully, find some path forward. But we can't do that, again, as long as there are actors out there who want us at each other's throats, who want neighborhoods on fire, and who want to see this country destroyed.
Yeah, after Mr. Floyd's video, police chiefs and sheriffs from around the nation took it upon themselves to go in public and denounce it and say that, we're not that here in our communities. But those statements, without the training and the infrastructure behind changing, implementing real change, is meaningless, and actually hurts them, because they're going on record saying they don't tolerate what happened in Minneapolis, in their department, say in Florida, say in California, say in New York. Sooner or later, there's going to be an incident in their community. And if they didn't implement real change and training programs in conjunction with their meaningless statement, because they did nothing substantial behind it, they're now on record saying, we didn't tolerate this here, but we didn't do anything to change it. And these same police departments now are losing tens of millions of dollars in infrastructure and damage that could be used for training, that could be used for outreach to the communities and such, that now is going to be used for replacing vehicles, replacing, police stations, replacing uniforms, replacing stolen equipment, paying for police officers who are injured in the line of duty. This is money that all could have went to helping community and police relations and training for these officers nationwide.
Absolutely. Rob, listen, man, I really appreciate you coming on the program and giving us your perspective. I hope that we can have you back on again very soon. And again, I hope that somehow we are able to find a way forward through all this mess.
Yeah, it's really troubling and really hurts internally for me to see what this country has come down to. And it's a combination of a perfect storm. It's, the COVID lockdown where people are frustrated to begin with. This was the spark, but is this the spark for real change, or was this just the spark to burn stuff?
Great question. Rob O'Donnell, Brothers Before Others, former New York Police Department. Thank you again, sir, for coming on the program today. All right, we'll get back to the good deed of the day. We'll get back to our recidivist report at some point, probably tomorrow. But I do have an armed citizen story we'll leave you with from Omaha, Nebraska. I've actually seen some of the headlines about this over the last few days. A shooting outside of a bar in Omaha during the riots over the weekend, and the bar owner who shot this rioter not facing charges now after the county attorney took a look at surveillance video, interviewed the armed citizen, and examined the evidence. KMTV says County Attorney Don Klein said that the shooter was defending himself when he shot James Scurlock, said that the shooter was justified in shooting Scurlock. Apparently, there was a scuffle involving Jacob Gardner. He's the owner of the bar, the Hive Bar. There was a scuffle involving his dad and a couple of these looters. Gardner then backed up. He displayed a firearm, and that ended that immediate threat. But then two people jumped on him and began assaulting him. Gardner fired 2 shots, didn't hit either one, but the 2 men who had assaulted him then jumped off of him. So that ended that threat. And then as Gardner was getting up, that's when Scurlock jumped on his back and began choking Gardner. Gardner said he fired 1 shot, hitting Scurlock in the clavicle. Scurlock's son, James Scurlock II, says, I honestly feel that if Mr. Gardner's dad would have kept his hands to himself, the incident would have never happened in the beginning. I said, once again, I ask that we investigate this. Well, again, I don't know what other investigation is going to take place here. Prosecutors say that Gardner did not have an active concealed carry permit, but has not been charged with a crime. Even if he were to be charged with, not having a concealed carry permit, if he was acting in self-defense, he's going to be facing probably a minor fine for carrying without a license. I hate to see situations like this. I hate to see any of these stories that are taking place where people are forced to defend themselves because of the actions of rioters and looters. I would love to see calm and peace restored to these streets across America. But I do hope that the folks who are out there intent on perpetrating violence right now, I'm not talking about peaceful protesters. I'm not talking about people who are angry about the death of George Floyd or people who are angry about the actions of officers in Louisville, Kentucky, where the police chief was just fired after another shooting in which officers did not have their body cameras on. I'm not talking about folks who are justifiably angry but are acting lawfully, exercising their First Amendment rights to protest. I'm not talking about those folks. I'm talking about the people who have this other agenda, the people who want to see our cities burn, who believe that they can rebuild some glorious society on the ashes. Those are the folks who need to understand that there are millions of Americans out there who stand ready to protect themselves, their loved ones, and they will not go down without a fight. Again, I hope and pray that we can start to restore calm. And I have a feeling that if we do, armed citizens, again, prepared to act in self-defense, will be a part of restoring that calm to cities across the country. That is going to do it for this edition of Bearing Arms Cam & Company. Thank you for being a part of the program. We will have much more on the next edition. Until then, be well, be safe, and be free. We'll see you soon with more Cam & Company. Bearing Arms Cam & Company tomorrow.